Hello and welcome to News Intervention. The US-Taliban peace deal has been signed, and this deal is going to have major ramifications across Central Asia, the Middle East, or the West Asia as many would like to say, and of course India. And to discuss this US-Taliban peace deal, we have a very special guest, Dr. Abdullah Haiwad. Dr. Abdullah is the president of Afghan Governors Assembly, and Dr. Abdullah is also the former governor of Khor province of Afghanistan. He understands the Afghanistan politics very well. He understands the entire Pashtun and Pakistan politics. So, Dr. Abdullah, thank you for talking to News Intervention. And Dr. Abdullah, if I may begin by asking you, what do you think about this very important US-Taliban peace deal? And do you also think that this deal, this US-Taliban peace deal, is going to bring any semblance of peace, the much needed peace across Afghanistan and of course in the entire region for that matter?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a very good question. The US and Taliban, they have struck a deal in Doha, Qatar, in order to bring peace and stability in Afghanistan. This is one of the efforts the US government has been trying to make for many years, and trying to stabilize Afghanistan's security and political situation. But again, Taliban's, they're not independent, and Taliban's, they've been financed, supported, and influenced by the ISI and Pakistani government. Therefore, striking a deal or signing an agreement with the Taliban, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Rather, the Pakistani government should have been directly involved in the dialogue and also in agreement. And one of the things which I'm not very optimistic about is that Taliban, they don't have their own decision-making abilities, because all the way since their creation and the re-emergence of Taliban during the interim government of Hamid Karzai to date, they have been supported and financed by the ISI and Pakistanis, and they have been, told what to do in Afghanistan. Therefore, I think, in the first instance, Pakistani should give up, in influencing terrorism in Afghanistan as well as in the region. Second, the Taliban should start, dialogues with the Afghan government in a way that they should feel, or they should, kind of understand, the problems, the Afghan people are facing. And as an Afghan Taliban, they should, realize that it's time, that they should lay their arms. The only excuse was that the Americans, they are in Afghanistan, and they are infidels, and we have to fight the Kafirs or the infidels. Now that the Americans, they have decided to leave Afghanistan, it's the best opportunity for the Taliban, to lay down their arms and come and embrace peace in Afghanistan, and join the process of democratic processes which have been laid the foundation by in the past 19 years, and stay with the rest of the Afghans the way the other Afghans live.
But I also want to understand from you that already there are talks that this deal has hit a rough patch, simply because Afghan Taliban fighters were expecting that around 5,000 of their fighters would be released by the current Afghan government, which has not happened. And now there are reports that they have attacked Junubi, Helmand, Kandahar and Kerez provinces within Afghanistan. So do you think that this entire deal is going to remain on paper, and there's absolutely nothing is going to change on the ground?
Once again, the deal was made between the Taliban and the US government, and the Taliban demanded that their 5,000 prisoners should be released. Now, behind the scene, from what we heard, the Pakistani government has been emphasizing on 746 approximate number of ISI agents or Pakistani government officials who were dressed as Taliban and they were fighting in the fronts against the Afghan government has been arrested, and they're in different prisons in Afghanistan. And they wanted the immediate release of these people plus some other Taliban members. This is not a kind of, a fact which has come out. We don't have documents on this one, but we have heard, that these kind of speculations are there, and the Afghan government is screening at the moment, trying to identify who the Taliban wants to be released and who doesn't have to be released, because they have killed a lot of people and they have been, they have got criminal activities, repeated criminal activities, or terrorist activities in Afghanistan. Therefore, Afghan government has been cautious about releasing these 5,000. To be honest, it's already, like you said, it has had a rough road, and this I'm not very optimistic about. These kind of peace deals, and traditionally in Afghanistan, if there is two warring factions or two tribes, they fight each other. First, they try to make a ceasefire between them, and after the ceasefire, then a group of elders will come and bring them together and make peace between the two tribes or the two communities. Unfortunately, this did not happen in Afghanistan between the Taliban, the Afghan government, and the US government. While the war was going on and people have been killed, they tried to make a peace agreement, which I'm not very optimistic. And again, the Pakistani government and the Pakistan ISI has a great hand in the functioning of terrorist activities by the Taliban in Afghanistan and elsewhere. The international community and the United States government should take a guarantee from the Pakistani government that they will not finance, support, and enhance terrorism, not only in Afghanistan but all over the world. Unless otherwise, they come to a decision that enough is enough and we have got tired and we should be stopping, terrorist activities, not only in Afghanistan, around the world, then there is a possibility for peace in Afghanistan, and as a large, the whole world can be a better place if Pakistan stops supporting and financing terrorist activities around the world.
So tell me something, like, do you feel that the US government is so naive to trust the Taliban for that matter, or you feel that is it some kind of a compulsion for US President Donald Trump to strike a deal with the Taliban, especially in this election year when Mr. Trump is seeking a re-election?
Ambassador Khalilzad and his team has been under immense pressure for the past year that they have to, from the US government side, to strike a deal with Taliban and as soon as possible before the 2020 election, United States presidential elections. Since they are under pressure and Donald Trump wants to show that, look, I take out all the American forces from Afghanistan and we are not losing, we cannot afford to pay more money, for a war that is not winnable. And since we have been stuck for 20 years in Afghanistan, so now look, in my first term, I took almost all the US soldiers from Afghanistan. But rushing into this issue, this might cause kind of imbalance in bringing peace in Afghanistan. They can only take away or remove their soldiers from Afghanistan, but in the long run, it might create problems for the Afghan government. The Taliban can come a bit more stronger against the Afghan government. Like you can see, there are immense attacks. There are intensified attacks against the Afghan government. Yesterday, I heard there were attacks on 18 provinces. Today, there was an attack on the Shia gathering of Abdullah Haiwad's 25th anniversary, death anniversary. So these kind of things, this shows, that the side effects of U.S. government's rush into bringing peace or just getting a deal signed and sealed with the Taliban and getting out of Afghanistan. These are the side effects that could really, harm Afghanistan in the long run.
And what does this deal mean for India? In specific, if I may ask you about this US-Taliban peace deal in the context of India, do you feel that there could be a possibility of fresh terrorist attacks in the Kashmir at the behest of Pakistan?
Now, what does it mean? What the peace deal means to India as a whole? I will divide this into two parts. One, that if this deal really, materialize, because Afghanistan and India, historically they have been very close friends, and our ties, the Afghan government's ties and Afghan people friends with India. Now, this relationship might kind of make Pakistan unhappy and attack on Kashmir, intensify terrorist activities on Kashmir. But on the other side, a peaceful Afghanistan means trouble for Pakistan, and Pakistan doesn't want trouble on both sides of their border. On one side India, on another side Afghanistan. Therefore, they will try and not have a peaceful Afghanistan in order to be, to be free, to do whatever they want to do in India and other parts of the world. As a whole, India can play a kind of, a good, honest friends relationship like they have been playing since the independence of India, and they have been good friends of Afghanistan ever since. They can play that role in the peacekeeping role and the development that they have been doing, like Salma hydropower station and many other projects they have been doing in Afghanistan to enhance economy and also strengthen the relationship between Afghanistan and India. But the consequences, of course, Pakistan is a very dangerous place. Many US senators have been talking about this, that if they want to stop terrorism in the world, they should stop Pakistan terrorist activity. The ISI and the Pakistani governments and army, helping the terrorist organizations like they have at the moment. There are more than 20 organizations which are funded and financed, enhanced, trained, and also their plans are given by the ISI and the Pakistani government. Now, if international community and the United States government wants to have a sustainable peace, not only in Afghanistan, but all over the world, they should put more pressure on the Pakistani government to stop funding and financing and training and harboring terrorism on their land. So this is very important, and this may not be possible without resolving a very important issue, that's the Durand line, because most of the terrorists they are harboring and training and funding and financing are in parts where it is on the other side of the Durand line, which is Pashtunistan and Balochistan, and these two parts are disputed lands. Baloch, they have been independent since the history has begun, and the Pashtun land, which is Pashtunistan, has always been belonged to Afghanistan since Durand has mocked a line which is a fake line, and they have taken part of Afghanistan and they give it to India at that time, and in order to be able to form Pakistan out of so many different pieces of India and Afghanistan. So this is an important issue. Unless this issue is addressed internationally, and a new dialogue is opened on this matter, the terrorism issue or the war, the problems in Afghanistan and India, and problems all over the world the terrorist problem cannot be resolved. Once we have a solution to the Durand line, I can assure you that peace will prevail all over the world, because Pakistan does not want to keep terrorist camps in Lahore and Punjab and other parts, where they have their keen interests and their own citizens live. Therefore, it's very important that the international community, especially India and Afghanistan and the United States and other stakeholders who are involved in Afghan war and in Afghanistan, to address this issue more seriously and get to a conclusion.
And also, Dr. Abdullah, a whole bunch of Taliban fighters today, they're born after the 9/11 attacks of 2001. So, do you feel that, or do you see these new generation of Taliban fighters, which are anyway different than the earlier generation of, say, the Osama bin Ladens or the Mullah Omars? What do you feel, or what do you see in this new bunch of Taliban fighters who are at the moment on the grounds, in the streets of Afghanistan, fighting with the guns and all?
We have 3 generations of Taliban, or 3 generations of warriors, which has incorporated in the Taliban organization, or the Taliban terrorist organization. One generation was the Mujahideen who fought the Soviet Union. Another generation was the Mujahideen who were fighting the Taliban. Another organization, or the Taliban, which are born and brought up during the peace era, which is from 2001 until now. So they are coming with different kind of experiences, and they are coming with different kind of attitude towards war, and they have different strategies for or kind of understanding of why they are fighting, and ethics about the war that they are fighting in Afghanistan. And it's very important to understand each warring faction's theology, their thoughts, and their understanding of why they want to have a war, or why they want to fight. Obviously, this is different than the Osama bin Laden, Mullah Omar race, or their generation of terrorists. But again, they have got a lot of things in common. They have got a lot of ethics in common. And this is very important, that they should be analyzed, understood, and then once the whole thing is analyzed, then a new strategy has to be made for these kind of warriors. The Taliban's, if I give you a small example, part of the Taliban, they've already been recruited by the Al-Qaeda. They are breaking their ranks from the Taliban, because the Taliban started making peace with the US government and negotiations. So for the past year, part of the Taliban, they are breaking up and they are going with Al-Qaeda. A good part of the Taliban, they are breaking up and they are going with the ISIS, which are operating in central and northern Afghanistan, which is again equally dangerous for not only for Afghanistan but for the whole world. Bringing peace with Taliban, or negotiating peace with Taliban, or signing up any treaty or agreement with the Taliban means just one warring faction out of so many other warring factions, and their ranks. Because somebody who's been fighting all his life, he has been holding a gun. Now all of a sudden he cannot just lay his arms and just go and start a normal life. And they are scared of living a normal life, because they have been carrying a weapon for the past 40 years or 30 years. So that's a long time. That's why they are breaking ranks from the Taliban, and they are joining ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other, in order to keep their status as a warrior, as a holy warrior, or whatever you call it. Therefore, it's there is need for a good understanding, research, and also to understand what are the ranks and how they have to be analyzed and how they have to be dealt with. I mean, peace cannot come only with US government and the Taliban signing an agreement that we will not have fight. There are other organizations which are funded and trained by the ISI and Pakistani government, which are active at the moment, and they are fighting the Afghan people, the Afghan government, and they are active, very much active, and probably they will have plans to cross over to Central Asia and Russia, and also on the other side cross over to India and destabilize the whole Central and South Asian countries in the region.
Yeah, also, and as you will agree that Taliban is the product of Pakistan's dirty game. So, what do you think Pakistan could possibly do now to increase its sphere of influence in Afghanistan? Do you see that this peace deal could mean a return of radical Islam in Afghanistan, across Afghanistan, to the levels of pre 9/11 terrorist attacks?
Pakistan still have a lot of chips in their sleeves. They still have, a lot of different organizations who are ready, for harboring different kind of terrorist activities in the region and the world, especially in Afghanistan. It's not that if Afghan government and Taliban or the US government and Taliban make a peace deal, then the whole country will be roses and Pakistan will be struggling to find other terrorist organization, to support and finance. If they are bringing ISI, Taliban to make peace with the US government, that's just one small faction of the terrorist activities that they have, or one group of active terrorists that they have in Afghanistan that they are fighting the Afghan government. But they have so many different other organizations who are active and fighting, and they are pretty much, strong, as strong as the Taliban. And I think they will have. The world has a long way to go to curb terrorism altogether. If a proper strategy is not made against Pakistan by the international community, especially the United States and NATO, this intensified world terrorism, which is harassing almost every human being, every citizen of the world, this cannot end by having Pakistan and financing all these terrorist organizations, and then on the other side we go. You can, if you want to stop the water, you have to stop it upstream, not downstream. Downstream, as many stones as you put, as many barriers you make, the water will keep flowing from upstream, and it will take the barriers. But this terrorist activity is exactly the same as with the water stream. They have to close it from Pakistan. They have to close it from the Pakistani administration, from the ISI structures, which is the main financiers and harborers of international terrorism.
Also, I would like to understand from you, do you see a kind of a rift within the Taliban, a kind of a pro-Pakistan faction of the Taliban and the pro-Afghanistan faction of the Taliban? Do you see some kind of an intra-Taliban conflict happening on the soils of Afghanistan, where the two factions, the pro-Pakistani and the pro-Afghanis, trying to fight out with each other to gain control of Afghanistan? Do you see this kind of a possibility over there?
I still think, that the Talibans, they have already been divided, I've been thinking this, for the past few years, whenever I interview with any newspaper or television, I talk about Mullah Rasul, Niazi, who's, separated from the other Taliban ranks, and even they announced, that these Taliban who are negotiating deals with the US government is not the real Taliban. They're proxies of Pakistan, and they're listening to the Pakistani government and wishes for the peace deal. And we are free, we are Taliban, we are fighting the Afghan government, we are fighting other Taliban groups that are against, the Islamic values in Afghanistan and the cultural values of Afghanistan. So, like Mullah Rasul, there are other factions as well, who are really not pro the deal that the US has made with the Taliban. The same goes inside Afghanistan with the government. The government is also divided on this matter. A part of the politicians, they are saying we support this US-Afghan deal, and the part of the administration is saying no, we don't support the US-Taliban deal that has been made. It's not for the benefit of Afghans in Afghanistan. It remains to be seen, in the next few months, how things will move, and how the different actors, the Taliban, factions, different factions, and the Afghan government, divided factions, will come together and talk about this. I'm not sure. I don't want to be very optimistic, but I believe, that this is not the ideal peace that the Afghans have been looking for, or the international community hope for. But let's hope and cross our fingers and see, how things will go and what will be the result. We hope, that it's a positive one, and peace prevail in Afghanistan.
And also, Dr. Abdullah, do you see that there could possibly be a spike in poppy trade or the drug trade or the cultivation of poppy by the Taliban in Afghanistan in the coming months, in the coming years as well? Because of this, as a fallout of this peace deal, now there will be a peace, there will be no US troop presence over there. Do you see this happening in Afghanistan by the Taliban?
Poppy cultivation, it's something, it's not much relevant, although it is relevant to the terrorist activities. But, we are producing 92% of the world's opium, and it's one of the greatest, number, or the greatest supply of drugs that Afghanistan has been involved in for the past, since the start of the Russian invasion and the war. This culture of, poppy cultivation and drugs and terrorism, these two things are going hand in hand. And I don't think, because a reduction in terrorist activities or Taliban, joining the Afghan government can reduce, because Afghanistan government, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Anti-Narcotics, the government as a whole, Ministry of Defense and Interior and other ministries, Land Ministry, doesn't have the capability, to stop this and to reduce poppy cultivation. Although they have many plans in the past many years, to reduce the poppy cultivation in Afghanistan, but it has ever been increased, and their activities are increased, and the financing of the of poppy cultivation and drug has been, it's an international phenomenon, and I don't think, that there'll be a huge effect. I mean, a reduction or increase in poppy cultivation and export, or taking, or stakeholders who are involved in poppy cultivation, there won't be a lot of, kind of variation or changes in this trade, because this is going far and wide. In many years ago, in one of the conferences I attended, the numbers were that Afghanistan was growing 20,000 tons of opium a year. Now that number might have increased over the years. That was in 2012. So 20,000 tons of supply cannot reduce to 1,000 tons or something. Even if it is 1,000 tons of opium, that's a huge number, and that still affects, the lives of normal people all over the world. I mean, this opium goes far and wide. It goes into the United States, Europe, India, and you name it, Russia, all over. And there is a big value chain which has been working on this, from the cultivation to transport, to supply, to wholesalers, to the end users. There's a huge value chain, and there's a huge, even the governments, there are some governments involved in poppy cultivation and supply, and also in transporting. So this definitely will stay, where it is for the next many years, for years to come.
Yeah, your point is well taken, Dr. Abdullah. But tell me something, like Pakistan would want its puppet Taliban to be a part of the government in Afghanistan, so that it can play its dirty games all across the region. What are the options that are left with India? What could possibly India do? Rather, what should India do so as to protect its strategic interests in the entire region, and also to maintain peace and harmony across Central Asia, across its northern frontiers, in Kashmir for that matter? What are the possible options for India?
Pakistan has always, since its creation, since for the past 72 years, they have been trying to put a proxy government in Afghanistan in order to be able to rule Afghanistan as a fifth state, or this is what they have been trying to do with the help of United States and other state, partners. They had the British and and other countries, that they wanted to keep their foots on the doorsteps of Central Asia. If you look at the way the Pakistani government has been dealing with the situation, I mean, by creating the Mujahideen, to creating the Taliban, to bringing Osama bin Laden into Afghanistan, and having terrorist camps in Afghanistan, and training and financing them, and to exporting the terrorists to Central Asia, to parts of Russia, and also to India and South Asia, to Europe, and all over the world. I mean, this is a big kind of chain of terrorist activities that they have been involved in, and this cannot happen if they are limited to Pakistan or Pakistan territory. Therefore, they always tried to keep a proxy government, or a kind of a government, that would listen to the Pakistani demands for keeping parts of the land, or using part of Afghan land for terrorist activities, or training camps, that will, they will keep the terrorists there.
That's an important point.
Train them and then supply them wherever there is need for. I think there is a good strategy needed for not only by the international community, but Afghans should also be involved actively into, saying no to terrorist activities, saying no to Pakistan, saying no to Pakistan's demand, saying no to, the activities of Pakistanis. For example, Afghans, they've started in the past 2 years, they've stopped using, Pakistani products. For example, their cement, which is a government-sponsored factory, anything, that relates to ISI Pakistan. The Afghans, began to realize, that using these products will enhance Pakistan's economy, and that money will be used against Afghans. Pakistanis, they are exporting to Afghanistan in huge numbers. And this exactly the same money that is supplied, the goods that are supplied to Afghanistan, the profits they are taking, part of that profit is used against Afghans by sending suicide bombers and terrorists. This realization has been, engineered, and we have been, there's a lot of organization who talks about this issue, that we should stop, enhancing Pakistan's economy in order to be able to attack Afghanistan with the same money that we pay for the goods. That's one part of the equation. The second part is that Afghanistan economy should be enhanced, and products that is coming from Afghanistan these products should be made in Afghanistan, so that they are self-sufficient and they do not import from Pakistan. This will be a big blow, because Pakistan cannot supply any products to, for example, India, China, Russia, or any other country. The only place that they can supply their goods and commodities in large numbers is Afghanistan. And if Afghans stop, importing Pakistani goods and services, this is a good opportunity for Afghans, to be more sustainable, and they can stop Pakistan's involvement or illegal activities in Afghanistan in terms of terrorism and other illegal activities that they have in Afghanistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdullah, for giving a great insight about this US-Taliban peace deal. And thank you for speaking to News Intervention.